sustain the dynamics of our negotiations, of our meetings, one very important aspect we have to deal with is that we sustain a very important environment which allows us to move on with all issues of the progress of the peaceful resolution of this conflict. And you know that there is no alternative to the peaceful resolution of the conflict. Now, I think this some developments in these past weeks, past month, have been influencing the process, and I think we should be we have to look at it in a careful way and see the ways in which we can be faithful to the agreements that and the understandings and the agreements that we have been working on over the previous months, and this was a very important part of our talks today. The political will to move on with the progress and the sustainability of the environment, which provides the right background in which the peace process is taking place, are very important priorities, and of course we have to focus on this with the co-chairs and with my colleague, the foreign minister of Azerbaijan. Փաստաթղթեր, որոնք գոյություն ունեցել են կամ փաստաթղթեր, բայց կան այստեղ փաստաթղթերի խնդիրը չի, այստեղ խնդիրը այն է, որ ինչ սկզբունքներով ենք մենք մոտենամ, որտեղ սկզբունքորեն մենք մեզ այսօր անհրաժեշտ է առաջի հերթին կենտրոնացած մնալ միջավայրի վրա, որը ապահովում է մեզ համար առաջընթաց գործընթացի, ինչ վերաբերվում է սկզբունքային մոտեցումներին, դրանք հայտնի են բոլորին, հայտնի են արտահայտված են Հայաստանի կողմից տարբեր առիթներով, եւ այդ կոնտեքստում է, որ մենք բոլոր դեպքերում դիտարկում ենք բոլոր տարբերակները այն կոնտեքստում, թե որքանով է դա արտահայտում, թե որքանով ենք մենք կարողանում տեսնել, որ մեր առաջնային խնդիրները, մեր առաջնային շահերը ստանում են իրենց արտահայտությունը։ Իհարկե, բավական երկար քննարկում ունեցանք եւ անհրաժեշտ է ժամանակ, որպեսզի ավելի, այսպես ասած, ավելի ուսումնասիրենք, վերլուծենք, գնահատենք այս փուլը, նախատեսում ենք շարունակել այս գործընթացը իհարկե, կհայտարարվի, երբ որ համաձայնությունը կունենանք հաջորդ փուլով ինչ են անում եւ դա կլինի, համանախագահները նույնպես իրենց մասով են։ Այդ առումով հիմա մեզ անհրաժեշտ է ուղղակի շատ ուշադիր վերլուծել, թե ինչպես ենք մենք կարողանում պահպանել այն դինամիկան, որը հնարավորություն է տալիս շարժվել, ունենալ քաղաքական կամքի եւ շարժվել դեպի խաղաղ կարգավորում։
Yeah, Minister, question is that since 25 years after the conflict, what has changed in terms of negotiation process? I'm talking like since 94 and 2019. What you know in terms of substantial conversations that time and right now, what has changed in terms of?
You are asking me a question that would require a very long analytical research,
very briefly,
and that I think, given that we have spent a few hours with my colleague and with the co-chairs on some very important talks, engaging in such analytical research is not exactly what I'm up to at the moment, but I think it is very important to understand that when we underline the very big absolute priority for Armenia and the Nagorno-Karabakh, the absolute priority of the security of the people of Nagorno-Karabakh, from which stems the question of status, is very much defines the way in which we look at the negotiations. And of course, one has to understand that the whole resolution, peaceful resolution, means compromise, and compromise means a two-way street. And here, I think we have to be very sensitive about the way in which we perceive our absolute security concerns, absolute concerns, and also we have to perceive the concerns on the other side. So within this careful, approach and political will, I think we are prepared and we want to move on.
Mr. Minister, negotiation happened during the escalation of the conflict of line.
That's what I was saying all this time. This was, of course, this had a very bad effect because negotiating in a condition when there are elements of escalation and risks to disrupt this peaceful process, they have very bad effect. And of course, you cannot avoid that. But here, I think for the foreign ministers with the co-chairs, it is very, very important. It was very important also today to find the way in which we can work towards sustaining the environment that that has been a result of the conversation, of the agreement, the understandings reached at the level of our leaders. And I think it's a very important challenge that we sustain those agreements, those understandings, and that sets the environment within which the peace process is taking place.
Is there any concrete agreements about the future?
We have some agreements, or we have agreements that need to be implemented, and I think we have been reaffirming this concerning the journalists, concerning the detainees, concerning the strengthening of the ceasefire regime, the sustainability of the ceasefire regime, sustainability of an environment when we reduce the risks of escalation. These have various specific steps to take, and I think we need to work to bring this to fruition.
Is there any change in position of Armenia about including Nagorno-Karabakh?
About what?
Including Nagorno-Karabakh.
Well, look, there is no change. There couldn't be any change, and I have to be understood very clearly. The Armenian position is based on a very practical. It's based on a very practical approach. The Nagorno-Karabakh is a stakeholder, is a subject to all this, and they have to have the respective sense of ownership if we are very serious about delivering a progress in the negotiating process. So in that, I think we have been very, very clear. But at the same time, we have been very, in our approaches, we're trying to underline that this is specifically a practical question of political will to provide practical progress in the negotiations. The subject to these negotiations, Nagorno-Karabakh, a stakeholder in these negotiations, Nagorno-Karabakh, has to have a direct sense of ownership. So that has been part of the conversation. Of course, we have to bear that in mind. But as I'm saying, the very important thing is that all these issues are interrelated. We have to treat it carefully in a way that we move forward with our.
Are you optimistic about the negotiations today?
Well, I'm very careful about all those judgments about optimism and pessimism, but I think it's a responsibility, because these talks have very direct implication on lives of people. And when you think in these terms, you have to understand that whatever you do has to serve the purpose of peace. It's good for our region, it's good for Azerbaijan, it's good for Armenia, it's good for Nagorno-Karabakh, it's good for the entire region, but it has to be in a way that each of the parties feels that there is a parity of commitment, there is a parity of commitment, there is a solution which each of the parties, on the basis of compromise, feels that it serves the national interest, the national concern, the concern of each side. It delivers on those concerns, finds a way in which this parity of commitments provides the necessary balance. That's the essence of compromise. Այո, ես կարող եմ հաստատել, որ հաջորդ հանդիպումը մենք համենայն դեպս համաձայնություն ունենք, որ անհրաժեշտ է աշխատել այդ ուղղությամբ եւ հաջորդ հանդիպման մասին նորից մենք կվերջնականացնենք համաձայնությունը։ Մենք դեռևս նոր ենք դուրս եկել եւ հասկանում ենք, որ ներկայիս այս զրույցը դա առաջի, այսպես ասած, արտացոլումն է, թե ինչպես ենք մենք զգում այս արդյունքը այս բանակցություններից է։ Մենք բնականաբար պատրաստ ենք շարունակել եւ պատրաստ ենք արտահայտել այդ հաջորդ ռաունդը, երբ որ համաձայնությունը կունենանք, բայց նույնպես կվերահասնենք, որ սպասել չի տա, բայց միևնույն ժամանակ իհարկե շատ էական է, որպեսզի մենք կարողանանք վերահաստատել այն հանձնառությունները, որոնք վերաբերվում են համապատասխան միջավայրին եւ զինադադարի ամրապնդմանը եւ համապատասխան մեխանիզմներին, որոնք ապահովում են նման միջավայր.
Was it a part of this?
That's exactly. I mean, I have been talking about the priorities for Armenia, and obviously the issues that are priorities for the other party are there. And as I'm saying, there is a.
So what is the
solution? The solution is a compromise. You don't expect me to go in elaborate discussion or analysis of all these issues right now in front, right after these talks. This was not exactly what we've been dealing with now, but as I'm saying, we have our priorities and we talk about our priorities. But you also remember that I was talking about the way in which to build peace is the way in which to find solutions to the various issues that concern all the parties. And I would want to remind also that the Prime Minister of Armenia has said this before, and we have reiterated this, that whatever solution will be achieved, it has to be acceptable to the people of Armenia, the people of Nagorno-Karabakh, and the people of Azerbaijan. And that, I think, is a very important message. For the moment, as I'm saying, the very concerning developments, the ceasefire violations which claimed lives are important challenges that we have to deal with, we have to address, and we have to reduce those risks of escalation. In that we can sustain the important environment which helps us to move forward. So we had this conversation today. I'm glad we have a good rapport with the co-chairs, with my colleague, and in that spirit we need to continue our negotiations.